Hello, everyone. It's Lindsay Landry, and today I'm here with Michelle Wolff, and I'm so excited to be here with her today, and just to have her as a guest expert in the Make a Splash Summer Bash. So Michelle, she's one of my soul sisters. I've had the honor of doing mini sessions with her, and she has personally really helped me move through some deep blocks and create some deep openings for me to move forward in my business. She has a wealth of knowledge. She has years and years of experience. So I'm going to hand it over to her and let her tell you a little bit more about herself, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. So I'm old. That's another way to say I have years and years of experience.
And you're the queen of the universe.
I am the queen of the universe. I am the queen of my universe. And so let's see. So my background is therapy and child protection and social work and rescuing too many cats and all of those kinds of things. And then a couple of years ago, I made the switch to being a coach, which I much prefer. And the whole bottom line of my work is establishing a connection to personal power. And that's like the driving force. That's the thing that keeps me going. When I get someone on the phone, I'm listening for their stories about why they can't. And I spend most of my focus on helping them see for themselves that they can. They can do anything they want to do. And it's really not a complicated process. It can get complicated, but the bottom line of it is it's there waiting for you. And I love helping people access the way to connect to that personal power and feel it and then utilize it right away, like really quickly. Like I want people to be able to feel better the same day that we talk. So
yes, totally. And I know that, that is, one of your gifts, because when we've done sessions together, like I've had things actually moving before we even have the session, and then as well as right after the session too.
Yeah.
Which is always so fun. I love that so much about energy work. It's like we can get the results really fast.
Yes. Yeah. And I love when you hear people say people use that term a lot, holding space or creating space. And what that looks like for me is before a call, I'm just meditating on that person and just reminding myself to connect to my own personal power and understand that I have a thing to offer, and then the person I'm working with has an opportunity to pick that up and then use it for themselves. And so the space is opened like before you even get on the call, so that to me that's just more efficient. Like you're already doing your own work before we get on the call together, and so then things can line up and go really fast. That's fun.
Totally. So before we dive in a little bit deeper, I just want to talk a little bit about...
And I have a little bit of frozenness. So let me see if I can come back in.
Are you frozen? Or am I frozen? People in the comments, can you let us know?
Here I am. I can hear. I can't see you. Lindsay, can you see me or hear me?
Okay, there you are. Is it not working?
How about now?
Okay, you're back.
Okay, I can't see you, but can you see me?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah, we're like turning up the power, right?
Right.
Everyone take a deep breath.
Everyone take a breath.
So funny.
We're too
I had
elected.
a session. I had a session for myself yesterday, and my phone was working fine all day, and then like right before the
Right.
session, I couldn't hear her, and I was like, "Oh my god, she can't hear me. The phone's not working." And every single time, it just makes me laugh so much how technology and all these things. It's like you can't
Yes.
make it up. It's such a reflection, of our energy, and
Yeah.
when we can start to realize that, it's like we can own our power more, right? And we can start to
Absolutely.
notice, like, that's actually what I wanted to like talk a little bit about, why this is important, right? So it's like a lot of the women in this group are business owners, and they're really wanting to grow their business. And so, can you talk a little bit about how maybe, the disconnect from their power, like how that might affect their business, or even like then being connected, like how that would start to change things?
Well, I think that the drive to access our personal power is um, really creating a lot of restlessness in women, especially because we've been disempowered in the cultural system. And I can only speak to the United States. I do think it's a worldwide issue, but with the political circumstances, so it's pushing us and making us seek harder, I think, to find out how we maintain a sense of sanity by accessing our own ability to choose. If we don't feel like we have choices, or if we can see choices but we don't feel like we have the strength or the freedom or the ability to take or access those choices and then implement them, then it just leads to a whole crash and burn scenario where you find people who have great ideas, but they can't get disciplined enough to bring them together. So they want to start something and they have all this stuff in their head, but it's not manifesting then out in the real world where you can see it. So they aren't able to serve. And the disconnect, I think, comes at the core from being disembodied, not being grounded in your body for a lot of women. So you get the swirly, overwhelmed, but the kids need me, and the spouse needs me, and the job needs me, and the everything needs me, and I have no time for myself. The starting point for everyone that I work with, and I believe it's supported by thousands of years of history, is when we come back to our breath and we settle into our body, then we start to remember the truth that we actually do have a choice. We have a choice of what we look at. We have a choice of how we participate with our families. That phrase, that saying, not my circus, not my monkeys, that needs to be implemented more. Like a lot of the things that we get consumed with are really not our problem and often are best left alone for the people involved in them to handle themselves, including our kids. So when we remember that we can breathe, and right there in deciding to take 5 minutes to do some conscious breathing, that's an act of power. That's a micro movement toward saying, okay, well, I'm all frazzled, overwhelmed. I can't handle this. I'm going to run in the bathroom and I'm going to take 3 to 10 deep breaths, and I'm going to do that for myself, and I'm going to feel better. In that tiny little moment that takes about 5 minutes, you've demonstrated to yourself and reminded yourself that you have the power to change how you feel. Just because you feel overwhelmed right this minute doesn't mean you have to feel overwhelmed 5 minutes from now. Does that make sense?
Totally. Yes,
Yeah.
I totally agree. And what was coming up for me too is like, so there's definitely the overwhelm with like trying to do all of the things. So trying to
Yeah.
be the wife,
Yeah.
trying to be the mom, trying to still
Yeah.
have your business. And then a big pattern that I notice as well with a lot of people in the online space, like wanting to grow online businesses, especially heart and soul centered, women and coaches,
Yes.
is
Absolutely.
it's really easy to um, either feel other people's energy and start to take that on. So then you start to think like you should be doing something, or even the mold, right? So there's a lot of how-tos and kind of like instructional things. And it can be really easy to like start to put a lot of pressure on yourself trying to get it right or trying to fit into that mold of what we think we should be doing. And it actually takes us away from ourselves. So I don't know if you want to just maybe say a little bit about that, if you have anything to say on that.
Yeah, that's absolutely critical. So when you've taken your power back enough to take some breathing time and to restore some sense of balance, then what typically you start doing that on a regular basis, and typically what comes up is what you just said. There's a mold, there's a role, and there's a description of how you're supposed to act in that role. And that's handed to us by society and our culture and our family, parents, teachers, peers, the whole 9 yards. So we get a rule book for life, and it says in it, mothers do this, wives do this, employees do this. And then when we start to feel this urge to go out on our own and express our own authentic gifts in the world, we run right up against that rule book that says, well, wait, that moms don't do that. Moms aren't powerful. Moms don't take time for themselves. So then that's the importance I think what's missing a lot in the world of coaching is the energy work that has to happen there. So you have to go into each individual person's energetic system and listen for where those rules are, or stories, or blueprints, or whatever you want to call them, and then approach them from a perspective of, well, these are rules I was handed. These are rules that I learned, but these are optional, actually. Like when I step back and I feel into my power, I actually can make up my own rules. I can really take a look at what I think mom means, and I can redefine that for myself. Once you start doing that, you get the physical complaints. When you go against a rule, your body starts to react. You might get sick to your stomach, or get a headache, or suddenly be so fatigued you can't move forward. And that's only information letting you know that you've run up against the story. And when you address the story and the energy of that through getting into the body, then all that unravels, and you can see like, oh, of course moms take time for themselves. Of course moms do this, or wives do this, or business owners do that. You get to just look at it and redefine it for yourself. That's a very empowered place to be.
Yes, totally. And so there's two things that came up. So I'm like mentally wanting to take notes so that I can remember these things.
Right.
But the first thing that came up is you mentioned how we'll hit up against these places when we're doing something that I like to call them upper limits. So when we're doing something that might go against the rules, or like the rules in our energetic system, right?
Yeah.
We can hit up against these places. So like self-sabotage might happen, resistance might happen, or we might get physically sick. Is there anything you want to say about that?
I think that's probably the most common complaint I hear, is that, well, I can't stop procrastinating, or I start to do the thing and I just stop, or I fall asleep, or I just start eating compulsively, or we derail ourselves. Our systems are set up to stay in alignment. And when we're stretching to go, or what I typically tell people is normal feels abnormal in the beginning. So when you're establishing what is actually normal being that you live in your integrity and you say and do the things that you're here to say and do, that feels out of integrity in the beginning. It feels abnormal and uncomfortable. And so that shows up in the world as procrastination resistance. So the answer to that is to come back to the breath. Come back to the breath, breathe, center, and then start to ask a lot of questions. So you start to become your own inner energy detective, or your own, I tell people, treat yourself like a social scientist would treat a culture. Look at yourself as if you are a microcosm culture of all these different voices and all these different stories and all these different scenarios and dreams and hopes, and this whole collection of a culture inside of you. Okay. in case the replay works, I hope the replay catches it all.
If anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the comments as well, just as we...
I'm seeing you really good.
Wait for
really
Michelle
clear.
to come back on.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
Okay, so she's still there for you. She's not there for me. Oh my goodness. Can you hear me too? Obviously you can, Jen, because you responded. So funny. This is my first time hosting a Be Live TV, so okay, so let me... So yeah, if anyone has any questions, while we're waiting for Michelle to come back on, feel free to post them in the comments. Again, energy is such a reflection. So we're talking about upper limits and we're talking about resistance. And so the technology is resisting, reflecting that to us. And again, it's one of the things that I love about energy, because you can't make it up. It's always going to be reflecting to you.
Okay. Can you see me?
So
Hear
of
me?
course, yeah. So what I was just telling them is, of course we're talking about resistance, and so we're going to have like technology glitches.
Right. And I could still see you and hear you, and you couldn't see and hear me. And so isn't that, it's just weird. It just happens this way. Hopefully we just all have patience with our own processes and remember to breathe.
Exactly.
So where were we?
So I don't want you to repeat things, that you were already saying. Where were you leaving off before you hopped off?
I don't know when I got lost, because I could still see you and hear you, but then you said that you couldn't see and hear me. So I guess what I just want to reiterate, in case it wasn't heard, is that we always have to come back to our breath in order to get enough perspective to see the stories, rules, or triggers that we're running up against. And once we see those, the resistance and procrastination and things like that tend to just unravel themselves. It's just letting you know that you're caught up in a command countermand. So you have a command to grow your business, grow your group, and then you have a hidden counterman that says, don't get too big for your britches, don't get too big and sparkly. And then the running up against each other of that creates all the chaos that then distracts you. And the breath is the key.
And I think that leads to like that second question that I had, because in the beginning, we can feel like these upper limits, or like overcoming this resistance or this fear, is just kind of like newbie struggles, right? Like they can feel like, oh, something's wrong with me, or I'm doing it wrong. But like the truth is, every stage you're at. So even if you're hitting, 5K months or 10K months, like you can still have upper limits and you can still have different different resistance that falls into place. I was in a thread this morning in another group, and they were talking about asking the question, like, what did you do before you were an entrepreneur, and what was the step that like actually led you to become an entrepreneur? And many of the people were in corporate jobs, so they were making a lot of money. And I know you had somewhat of a corporate job too, where you had your set income, like you were high up, and then it's like, but you also might hit this place where you're struggling with your health issues, or you're just like deep down there's like a deep dissatisfaction. Like it's like when you have your time off, like you don't even feel full. So is there anything that you want to say around that? Because it's not even about it's not about just starting out. I think sometimes when we are in things and we might even be like successful, like we can still hit these places where there's something missing.
Yes. It's absolutely normal to, when you, so we don't do a good job of generalizing our skills and accomplishments. So people can feel like maybe I shouldn't pursue this path when they run into an upper limit, and that's not it at all. It's just you're running up against that tangled energy. So this sounds off topic, but it's actually not. But when you train a dog to sit, you train a dog to sit in your house, then you have to train the dog to sit outside. Then you take it to the park and you have to train it to sit there, because you're trying to generalize a skill across all these different domains. So if you've been a high-level professional or a business person in the corporate world, you have actually all the skills you need, but you aren't transferring them over to being an entrepreneur, because we see them as, oh, those are my corporate skills, those are my agency skills. Those skills, with a little tweaking and refining and some undoing of stories underneath can'ts, are easily transferred, and then you can be off and running using your same skills. But we just don't generalize our skills across domains very well.
Oh my God. So I want you to talk more about this, because it feels really exciting. And and I know that I struggled with this, and I see so many of my clients struggling with this, because even when I was a dietitian, like I had this way of like connecting the dots and seeing like why people were really struggling with their health. And I could go really deep to the core of the issue, but then there was like part of me, I was like, because I don't want to be a dietitian, like I'm just gonna disconnect from that, right?
Yeah.
But like when actuality, like I do the exact same thing with my clients when I'm helping them with their business. Like we're getting to the core of like where the thing is that needs to shift. So is there anything you want to say more about that, or like tips to help people connect to that magic, to their gift that they probably have been using it their whole life? And I think, someone actually posted a video in our group yesterday, Kara, and she was ordering a breakfast sandwich, and she said she realized she used her genius, right? Like ordering the breakfast sandwich, she helped someone relay the message.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know why that is, but some tips to figure out. So what happens is when people are making that switch into working for themselves, they suddenly feel like they're at ground zero and they're starting from scratch and they don't know how to do anything. And so then they're vulnerable to the 7 steps to 7 million and the kind of snake oil salesman in the business, internet, online world, where you end up spending a lot of money on things that don't actually help you get closer to your own power and your own knowledge. They actually take you further away by saying, well, do my method. And that's like actually, that's the antithesis of what I want to do. So what I do when I'm working with someone who's in a transitory place, or they're in one career and they want to shift to another, is I'll ask a lot of questions like, they'll say, well, I can't figure out what I want to do, or I have this project and I can't figure out the first step, or I can't prioritize anything. And so I'll just ask, where have you done that before? Where in the past were you handed a mass of information that you then had to break down into steps? How do you shop for groceries? You go in the kitchen and you assess what's in the kitchen, and you note, oh, we're out of bread, we're out of milk, and I need a can of coconut milk or whatever. And then you make a list. If you're forgetful because you're old or you're just forgetful, you make a list. Then you go to the grocery store and you locate the investigating. If it's a grocery store you're familiar with, you just go right to the product. So
Okay, so obviously we froze up again. So if anyone has any questions, feel free to post them in the comments.
Can you see me?
Yes, now I can.
Okay. So bottom line, before I the app keeps closing on my end is part of what the problem is. And and I read that on the reviews. The app is not strongly rated, so in the future I might have to do this with the laptop. But asking that question, where have I done this before? How do I handle projects in the rest of my life? How have I handled transitions in the past? What did I do? Did I read a book? Did I get centered? Did I explore my likes and dislikes? Let me put that out on paper and pick and choose and explore. Does that make sense? Exploring and asking a lot of questions will help you generalize the skills. If you've made it past 25 years old, you have a lot of skills. Even the skill to shop and pay your bills is a skill that you can transfer somewhere else.
I love to, especially when somebody is in that place where they feel like they're in a hole, like asking the question, when was I in similar situations and I got out? Or it doesn't even have to be similar situations, but when was I in a situation that was hard and I overcame it? So, when I really was at the place of wanting to move forward in my business, so this was about 2.5 years ago, I guess, I just remember feeling like I was in such a deep hole, and I knew that I had gifts, but it was just, I didn't know how to get out. And that was one of the things I really started to reflect on, like, okay, when other times have I been in a place where, I was struggling with my health and I didn't know how I was going to overcome it, or I didn't have a job and I didn't know how I was going to get a job. And just remembering that all of these things, like the little breadcrumbs were put in my path. I'm like, oh, so the breadcrumbs will be placed in my path again. Like, it always works out. Like, it's going to continue to always work out.
Yeah, exactly. And if you start with, when you feel stressed out like that and you're like overwhelmed, if you'll start with your breath and get centered, then you remember to ask those questions. Like, that's part of the issue, is people let themselves stay frantic and stressed out and forget to breathe. So to make the space to ask those questions, to remember, like, oh yeah, I'm not an idiot. Oh, I've survived things before. I can order at Starbucks. I'm all right.
And I swear, like, every time, I do a launch. So anytime, I just want to say this, because whoever's watching, whether you have been in business or you're like wanting to offer your first thing, like every time I offer something, I always, there's always like a questioning period. So it's kind of like I have to like tippy toe to the edge, and I'm like, do I really want to jump off this cliff? Like, is it going to really work? Like, am I going to have really a net to catch me? Like, is
Right.
this for nothing? And then it's like, once I let myself overcome that, right?
Yes.
Then it's like, okay, yes, I really do want to jump off this cliff. And when
Yeah.
I finally decide that, then it always works.
It always works. It does.
And if I jump and like the whole time that I'm jumping, I'm like, oh my God, this might not work. Oh my God, I don't think this is going to work. Oh my God. Ugh. Then that's when it usually doesn't work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You kind of have to live this.
You're like jumping and like, like kicking and screaming all the way down. It's like, right. Okay, yeah, you're going to belly flop.
Right. Yeah. That's going to be a hard landing and it's not going to feel good. But what you just described is naming the process. Like if people will name the process, like acknowledge the parts of themselves that are like, I'm going to bomb and fail and everyone's going to hate me and I'm going to look so stupid. And naming it takes the power out of that and restores you to the power of, okay, I hear you barking, Chihuahua brain, but we're actually okay.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And yeah, that brings me to one other thing that has just kind of been coming up throughout our conversation around really learning your patterns, like learning yourself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what I've noticed for myself, and I think you have similar, my upper limits kind of stay the same for the most part.
Yeah.
Relationships are usually my go-to. I'm like, Michelle, I'm struggling with relationship stuff again.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm trying to like hit this goal. So, okay. Yeah, that's what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. So we have like default settings. I had a professor who called it a familiar bad feeling. And under stress, we always go right there. So any positive stress, suddenly things are going good, we'll go to our default of relationships, or mine is money or feeling or depression. Like we go to the familiar place. And knowing that that you dive into your rabbit hole when things get scary and you get ungrounded, then you can compensate for it. Then you can just see it as a survival skill that's kept you alive. And you can say, thank you, scared rabbit hole diving self. And we're okay. We just always circle back to that. Thank you, crazy part of me. And we're okay. And let's breathe and take the next step.
Totally. I love it so much. I could talk to you all day, and I'm sure everyone could also listen to you all day.
I think my husband might have a different opinion of listening to me all day.
So funny. But I also just want to honor the time. So I want to just check in and see if anyone has any last comments or things that they want to say. And if there's any last messages or tips that you want to share as well.
While you're checking for comments, the thing that I really want people to hear when they're doing something new is things getting complicated doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. Things getting complicated can mean you're on the exact right path. And you know that because things are getting chaotic. So don't give up too soon. I will hear people say, well, it got complicated, so I took that as a sign that I shouldn't pursue that degree or I shouldn't pursue that new business. That might not be what it means. And that's where a coach can be helpful, is helping you sort out, is this an upper limit? Is this you getting tangled up in a rule that you learned when you were 3? Or is it really like this isn't the right path for you? And you can go to your own gut and you can breathe into it. But if you can't find the answer, that's when I think people really benefit from getting a coach, to get especially an energy coach, to get somebody else's eyes on, okay, here's this tangle going on here.
I totally agree. And, what I notice too is sometimes when it's a pattern that's really comfortable, we can even think that we clear it, right? So we're like, oh yeah, like I just cleared my chakras and they're clear. And like actually they're not. Like we're just seeing what we want to see. We're not able to like when we're just looking with our own eyes at our business or at our energy system or at our relationship, like it's really hard to see all the pieces by yourself. I was explaining this to someone yesterday about like if you're trying to, you know, put makeup on without a mirror, and so you can't see yourself, right? So I just kind of kept talking as you.
Yeah, good.
But what I was saying is like, if you're trying to like put makeup on without a mirror, you can't see like your lipstick is like smudged,
on
you know,
your nose.
because you can't, you can't see yourself. And I think when we're trying to do like some of these deep works, especially like moving forward in your business or moving forward in a relationship, I think relationships can be really challenging too. It's like because we have those default patterns where we're like, oh my God, no, I need to keep myself really safe.
Yes.
It's like our subconscious doesn't want us to see it. And so it's really hard, you know, it's like taking away all the mirrors for us to be able to see it with our own eyes. And so, yeah, like you were saying, like having the support. And I know for me, you know, having not only support from coaches, but like, you know, a community of support too is so important and valuable.
Yes, absolutely. It's critical. And not giving up too soon, like don't give up and think that you can see things clearly. Check with somebody else, and preferably not a family member. Get in a community, get some support, get on other people's websites, have somebody take a look. Here's what I'm seeing. What do you see? And that will keep you from giving up too quickly.
Beautiful. And if anybody's wanting to connect with you, can you tell them how they can connect with you?
I am on Facebook way too much, so you can always find me there. And it's just facebook.com/Michelle Wolff 11. And then my website is just thatmichellewolff.com. And I do Facebook Lives 3 times a week, generally talk about something. So Facebook, you can always find me.
So thank you so much again for being here with us and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom.
Thank you for having me. This was really fun for me, even with the technology.
Fun for me too.
Okay.
Yeah, same here. Such a reflection.
Okay.
All right, my dear, have a fabulous day. And anybody listening to the recording, feel free to, you know, post any comments or questions in the thread, and both of us will be present. You know, you can tag Michelle if you have questions specifically for her, but she's pretty active, so I have a feeling she'll be checking.
Yeah, I'll be stalking the comments section to see how else I can serve you.
Yes, totally.
Okay.
All right, I love you.
Bye. Love you.
Bye.